Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishna and Megillah, Parak Aleph, Chapter 1, Mishnah Vav, Mishnah 6. Okay, so first we have to have a little introduction. This Mishnah deals with a neder, which we translate as a vow. A neder is a statement through which a person forbids the use or benefit of an item to himself or to others. For example, one says, this loaf of bread is forbidden to me, or my loaf of bread is forbidden to Ruvain. Now, what that means is like this, just a little bit more detail. When the person says, this loaf of bread is forbidden to me, that could be his own loaf, it could be somebody else's loaf. When he says, my loaf is for, when he wants to forbid something to Ruvain, it's got to be his. He can forbid his things to others. He can't forbid other people's things unto others. Such a statement is effective under biblical law, meaning that the person to whom the neder applies becomes biblically forbidden to use or benefit from the stated item. That's the power of a neder. Okay, so now the Mishnah says like this: Ein bein hamuder hana mechaveroi lemuder mimenu machol. Muder hana is the term that's used for a person who is forbidden from something based on a vow. So you can be muder hana from someone, which means any benefit, right? A neder forbids me to have any benefit from someone else. Then you can have a neder where the benefit that is forbidden to you is specific to Michael, to food, or to a kind of food benefit. So the Mishnah says, Ein bein hamuder hana mechaveroi. There's no difference between a person who is forbidden by a vow to have benefit, general benefit from his friend, to someone who has a neder upon him that forbids him to have food benefit from his friend. There's no difference between the two, elodrisas haregal, other than being able to enter into that person's property, meaning if I become forbidden by a vow to have food benefit from someone, I can walk onto his property. If the vow is not to have any benefit from him, then I can't even walk into his property. And utensils that are not used for food preparation. That again, if my vow is from food benefit, then I cannot. Then if these vessels are not used for food, that's not food benefit. If the vow is I can't have any benefit, then I can't even use these vessels either. Okay? So now, let me read to you here from the notes in order to how the Rav explains this more. Now, it's important to know that when we talk about muder mimenu maichol, when you have a vow that forbids you from maichol food, it means any benefit of food, any benefit that leads to food. Know what that means to this, any benefit that leads to food. A person who is forbidden to derive food-related benefit from another may not draw any benefit from that person's property that can help him to make or buy food. Okay, when you say muder mimenu machol, right? If I would have said muder mimenu apples or this apple, that's limited. But all he said is machol, food. So food is understood not just to mean food literally, but it means any benefit that can lead to food. Therefore, this includes all benefit that has a monetary value, because by gaining such a benefit for free, he saves the money that he would otherwise have paid for it, and he can now use that money to buy food. That's how far it goes. Okay, which means you're actually, you're kind of limited, right? Yeah. It's not you're pretty limited. The only benefits permitted are those that do not have a monetary value, such as walking on the person's land, because one usually does not have to pay for such benefit. And then, if you don't own an amusement park, right? If you can't just walk an amusement park, so that you get it, that would be included in this neder. But just to walk into his backyard, he doesn't usually charge for walking into his backyard. There's no monetary benefit that could lead to food benefit, and he didn't forbid all benefit. It was just food-related benefit. Therefore, he can do that. Or using utensils that are not used in food preparation, if they are not usually rented out, and so one would not pay for them in any event. I lend you a hammer, right? That's not food benefit. Or I give you a hammer. Yeah, let's use my hammer, right? Now, yeah, but that's not what it's used for. Now, if you rent out now it shouldn't say like that. Now, if this is a hammer you typically rent out, right? You have a tool store, and it's a hammer that you typically rent out, and you let this guy use it for free. You save money, and that saved money can be used to buy food. So therefore, that's called a food benefit that he wouldn't be able to. So a person who has a neder that forbids him from food benefit couldn't use that hammer. But if that's his regular home hammer, it doesn't rent out, and in any event, I could use it for free, then since it's not a food preparation utensil, then you'd be able to use it. However, a person who is prohibited by a neder to derive any benefit from another may not engage him in these activities. These two activities then represent the difference between a neder that forbids only food-related benefit and one that forbids any benefit. Meaning that's how far it narrows down to. Any benefit is going to, food benefit would exclude, would you be allowed to have, you'd be allowed to have benefit from anything that doesn't save you any money, and it's not food related. Mm-hmm. And if there's no benefit permitted, if the vow included all benefit, then even these things would be forbidden. So that's what it means. There's no difference other than these two things. And there, as we can understand, there are a lot of things that they share in common. Now, next part of the Mishnah talks about something completely different. I mean, it's about vows, but a different kind of vow. And this part of the Mishnah is going to discuss the vow to bring a carbon. So let me just read. Let's start reading. Ein bein nedarim lenedavos. There's no difference between nedarim and nedavos. Now, nedarim and nedavos, we kind of loosely translate again. Nedarim is a vow. Nedavos is a donation. But in terms of a carbon, it has a very specific meaning. A neder is where, again, it's a promise. You took upon yourself to do something. You obligated yourself. The first part of the Mishnah, a neder has the power to forbid something on you, according to Torah law, that without the vow would have been 100% permissible. Here we're talking about a vow that obligates you to do something, and specifically a vow that obligates you to bring a carbon. Now, there's two ways you can obligate yourself to bring a carbon. You can say, I take upon myself, Harei olai oila. I take upon myself to bring an oila. That means I obligated myself to bring this kind of a carbon. Okay, what's the next step? Next step is to take an animal and designate it for your carbon. You don't just bring an animal and, here it is. You have to designate it to be used for a carbon. So now I made my vow to bring a carbon oila. And then I designated my animal to fulfill my obligation of bringing an oila. Then you can have that's a neder. A nedava means I see an animal and I say harei zu oila. That animal is sanctified to be an oila. That means my vow was to bring that animal specifically as an oila. Okay, so ein bein nedarim lenedavos. There is no difference between these two types of vows to bring a sacrifice, ella, other than shanadarim chaybach reyusen. The neder is, in the case of a neder, you are obligated to replace it. Unedavos eina chaybach reyusen, but by nedavos you're not obligated to replace it. So again, let's go back. In that case of a vow, you say, I take upon myself to bring an oila. Now I took an animal and I designated that to be used to fulfill my obligation. The animal dies. Do I have to now get another animal to replace it? The answer is yes, because the vow was I have to bring an oila. Now I wanted to use that animal to fulfill my obligation. The animal died. I can't use it. Now I got to get another animal to fulfill my obligation, because it's an obligation I took upon myself to bring a carbon oila. However, let's say that in the case of an adava, where I say this animal is an oila, my whole vow was this animal should be brought as an oila, and that animal died, then I'm exempt, because I can't fulfill my vow anymore. The whole vow was on this animal. I didn't make a vow to bring an oila. I made a vow to bring that animal as an oila. And once that animal dies, there's nothing more to do. So when we say that there's no difference between the two, that means they do share something in common. What do they share in common? Well, there's a couple of things they share in common, but the thing they share in common that is brought down here is the fact that they share in common that there's something called the prohibition of Baal Ta'achar. The Torah says when you take upon yourself to bring a carbon, do not delay its bringing. What does delay mean? What constitutes a delay? The halacha is you make a vow, and the shalosh regalim pass, and you still haven't brought your vow, then you have transgressed the prohibition of Baal Ta'achar of delaying a vow. That's what and that's what they have in common. Both Adar and Adavis, both those vows for a carbon, you have to bring them before the shalosh regalim, before the 3 holidays of Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot pass. Once they do, not necessarily. That may be a machlekes. But the point is that when you have those three that are passing, once those pass, then in both cases you have transgressed prohibition of Baal Ta'achar of delaying. Nonetheless, but what they do have a difference is, again, when the animal that you designate to fulfill your vow, depending on how you made it, that will make a difference whether you have to replace or not. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.